Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty cool, I think. We're looking at how the actual medium of a performance, whether it's film or video or theater or even stand-up, can totally change how things come across. We've got some really incredible insights from a performer who's worked in all these different mediums.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to be sharing how everything from the resolution to even the lighting can impact the pacing and the way they move and even the comedic timing. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's something that I think audiences don't always think about, all the stuff that goes into it.
Yeah, it's like behind-the-scenes stuff that you don't even realize is affecting what you see.
Right.
So to kick things off, our performer starts with a story about working on a show back in 1996 called Squawk Box.
Okay.
And this show was shot on Betamax.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's going back a bit.
Yeah, right. And they quickly learned that deliver their lines like really fast and snappy was important on that. So what's interesting is that low resolution video actually demands a faster pace
Okay.
because you just have less visual information to work with.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Each pixel has to carry more weight, right? So the performer has to be even more dynamic and expressive just to keep the audience engaged, I guess.
So they're having to make up for that lack of detail with I don't know, bigger movements or something.
Yeah, like they have to overcompensate, right?
Right.
And then the performer contrasts this with, high-resolution film, where you can see every little detail and nuance in the actor's face. They talk about movies like There Will Be Blood, where Daniel Day-Lewis, he has these long, silent stares. And those moments just wouldn't work on lower-res video because you wouldn't be able to see those subtle shifts in his expression.
I see. Yeah.
But now we're in this world of, HD and 4K and 8K.
Right.
So is digital starting to rival film in that sense?
I mean, are we getting to that point?
Yeah, like is it getting that good?
Yeah.
Well, it's something a lot of filmmakers are thinking about.
I bet.
And our source, they highlight a key difference between film and digital. Film is chemical, while digital is based on pixels. Right. And even though we're getting more and more pixels, there's still something about that chemical process that gives film a unique texture, I guess, and feel. And that difference can impact everything from the way actors move to how the edit is paced.
Yeah, so even though we're getting to this point where the technology's getting so good, that fundamental difference might just always be there.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about frame rate? That's different too, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Film traditionally runs at 24 frames per second, but digital can push that way further. You've got 120 frames per second or even higher.
Wow.
Yeah, and some people, they think those higher frame rates make it look too real, that you lose some of that movie magic.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but it's definitely pushing the limits for sure of visual storytelling.
It makes you wonder, though, how that's going to impact, performance in the future. Are actors going to have to adjust to these, super high frame rates?
Yeah, will their techniques have to change?
Right. It's something the industry's still figuring out, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. It's like this constant evolution of how we capture performance and how we experience it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, speaking of capturing performance, let's talk about auditions.
Oh, yeah.
Audition.
It sounds like our performer has some thoughts on that.
I bet.
Especially the way that some auditions seem so focused on, coverage rather than actual talent.
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds like they're frustrated by the pressure to deliver this totally perfect performance in what is a really artificial setting.
Right.
Especially when, scenes are shot out of order when you're actually filming.
Yeah, it's not real, is it? It's not how it works on set.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's more about the producers wanting to cover all their bases in the editing room than it is about seeing what the actor can actually do.
Yeah, I can see that. And then there's the whole wardrobe thing. The performer mentions how crazy it is to be expected to, dress for a specific role when there's a whole costume department.
Right.
Hello?
It's not your job.
Yeah, it's like they're judging you on your personal wardrobe, not your skills.
Right. Do you have good taste?
Yeah.
Instead of, can you act?
Yeah, exactly. They tell a hilarious story, though, about this tweed jacket that they got from Goodwill that they used to kind of get around these, wardrobe demands.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's clever.
So resourceful.
Yeah.
But beyond the humor, it points to this bigger issue, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't auditions be about talent and not, if you own the right outfit?
Right. Absolutely. The focus should be, can you embody the character and not, superficial things like that.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk about something that I think everyone can relate to, whether you're a performer or not.
Okay.
Overworking.
Oh, yeah. Burnout. We all know about that. The performer shares a story about a commercial shoot where they did 3 setups for each scene.
Wow.
New furniture, new props, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
And guess what?
What?
The commercial never even aired.
Oh, no.
And they were just wiped out, totally exhausted by the end of it.
Oh, I can imagine.
And I think this highlights something that's important for everybody. A tired person cannot deliver their best,
Right.
especially when you need that peak performance,
Yeah.
Like an athlete needs rest.
Right.
An actor needs rest too.
Yeah. It's about knowing your limits, I guess.
It's a reminder that we all have limits, and pushing past those limits usually doesn't lead to good things.
Yeah. Diminishing returns for sure.
Totally. So whether you're on stage or, in a meeting or even just tackling your to-do list, knowing when to push and when to rest is so important.
That's a good point. It's about, I don't know, pacing yourself for optimal performance.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about live performance.
Okay, yeah.
Our source has some pretty interesting stories about working in, really different theater spaces.
Oh, I bet.
Like, from a tiny black box
Right.
with just one spotlight to, this giant vaudeville theater.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big range.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how the environment can really change a performance.
Right. Like the space itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the performer talks about this idea of, big and little circles.
Okay.
Basically, the size of the space dictates the scale of the performance.
I see.
So in a small space, even little gestures can have a big impact.
Yeah.
But in a large theater, you got to make things bigger, I guess, to reach the back row.
Right. Yeah. You got to project more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like the space itself kind of sets the volume for the performance,
It dictates how you approach it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they even connect this back to that spotlight in the black box, saying the better the light and focus, the slower and more subtle you can be.
Huh. That's interesting.
It makes you wonder how that applies to other situations too, like public speaking or even just conversations,
Right.
How does, the environment shape how we communicate?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's like we're always adjusting, whether we realize it or not, our communication style based on our surroundings.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's time to talk about something I'm really intrigued by. Mask work.
Oh, yeah. Mask work.
It's often seen as this, niche art form, but it has so much to teach us about physicality and expression.
Right. And those things are essential for any performer.
Right. And from what I've read, it seems like wearing a mask can actually help you understand the character in ways that you wouldn't otherwise.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like unlock something.
Yeah, like something clicks.
Yeah. It's like masks, they kind of force you to communicate through your body instead of your face, right?
Right.
It's a really cool way to explore movement and gesture and all of that.
And our performer worked with all kinds of different mask styles.
Oh, wow.
And they emphasize how each one demands a unique physical commitment.
I could see that.
They even trained with Jim Warren, whose style was lighthearted and whimsical.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
And then there's Dean Gilmore and Adrian Pecknold and Ron East.
Okay.
Each of those offered a totally different approach to mask work.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing, the range.
Yeah.
And get this, they even studied with Nick Jones and Mike Kennard from Mump and Smoot.
Oh, wow. Mump and Smoot.
Right. Talk about a masterclass in physical comedy.
That's incredible.
So it sounds like they were drawn to, the intensity of mask work.
Yeah, I can see that.
They mentioned that it's something all comics can benefit from, especially as they're transitioning into acting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do they mean by that?
Well, I think what they're getting at is that mask work demands this, total commitment and presence,
Yeah.
way more than other types of performance.
Mm-hmm.
You can't rely on facial expressions
Right.
or, subtle changes in your voice.
Right, yeah. It's all about the body.
Yeah, it's all about the energy that you're projecting.
Yeah, like stripping away all those layers, all the
Yeah.
superficial stuff.
And getting down to, the pure essence of the character.
Wow. So it's almost like boot camp for physical comedy.
Yeah. And they even talked about using mask work to teach animation students.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to help them connect their creative choices to, real-world physicality.
Oh, wow.
They would have the students, touch a wall and describe its texture,
Okay.
and then translate that into a drawing.
Interesting.
And then they'd push it even further and be like, okay, now imagine the character who lives in that room.
That's a really cool exercise.
Yeah, it forces you to think about how all these sensations like inform character and movement, right?
Yeah, so it's not just like coming up with a cool idea. It's about feeling it, experiencing it, I
Right.
guess.
It's got to be real.
Yeah.
And it sounds like out of all the different mask styles,
Mm.
our performer really connected with something called mask and trance work.
Mask in trance. Okay. I
Oh.
haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, have you ever heard of that?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's a fascinating approach that blends puppetry and mask work
Yeah.
and physical theater.
Oh, wow.
They studied with Gord Robertson,
Okay.
who was a puppeteer on Fraggle Rock, among other things.
Oh, wow.
They described mask and trance as like, it gave them permission to do anything,
Oh.
but it also required like total commitment to whatever was happening in the scene.
Okay. So, I mean, that sounds like a real paradox, this freedom, but also constraint.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's often like where the most interest in art comes from.
Yeah, that tension.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the mask is like the catalyst, you know?
Right.
It pushes you to go beyond your usual habits
Hmm.
and discover something new.
Yep.
And they even mentioned that it helped them move away from relying on gags and find deeper truths in their scene work.
Huh. So it's not about abandoning humor completely.
Right.
It's about finding a different path.
Yeah, like a path that's based on honesty and truth.
Right.
And sometimes those like really funny moments, they just emerge from that place.
Yeah. It's about trusting the process, I guess.
Yeah.
Trusting that the mask will lead you somewhere.
Yeah, to something unexpected.
Yeah.
Okay, so this deep dive is full of surprises.
I know.
Now let's explore another cool world, mime.
Oh, yeah, mime.
Our source has a long history with this, starting at age 12.
Wow.
And mime is often misunderstood, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think it's just silent acting.
Right? But it's so much more than that.
Mm.
It's about precision and control and using your body to create a whole world without words.
Right, yeah, like telling a story just with movement.
Yeah. So they studied with Brian Taylor and Ade Howe, even incorporating mime into their school dances.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. They said mime taught them to be really efficient and effective with their gestures, you know,
Yeah.
like cutting out anything that doesn't contribute to the scene.
Right, so every movement has to have a purpose.
Yeah. And it's not just for the stage either.
Right.
Like think about public speaking or presentations,
Mhm.
even everyday conversations.
Mhm.
Being mindful of our body language and cutting out like all the fidgeting and distracting stuff.
Right, yeah.
It really lets your message come through.
It's like mime is a master class in nonverbal communication.
Totally. And they even mentioned recently performing an entire song
Mm.
for a friend's band,
Wow.
using just gestures and dancing and like goofing around.
That's awesome. So they're really using those skills in everyday life.
Yeah. They see it as more than just a theatrical technique.
Yeah, it's like a way of moving through the world.
Right.
Yeah.
It's given them this awareness of their physical presence
Yeah.
and how they come across to other people.
So it's not just about being silent or pretending to be stuck in a box or something.
yeah.
It's about understanding the power of your body to communicate.
Yeah, to connect with people.
Yeah, and tell stories without words.
This deep dive is making me want to take a mime class.
Me too. But first, let's talk about some of those iconic performers our source mentioned,
Okay.
like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin and Jim Carrey.
Okay.
There's so much to learn from them, how they use their bodies and their comedic timing to create these unforgettable performances.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about mask work and mime, but how do those techniques connect to some of the comedy legends our source mentioned? They brought up Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, even Jim Carrey.
Well, it's really interesting how they see these iconic performers through the lens of mime and mask work, you know, appreciating those techniques and how they add to their comedic brilliance.
Yeah, they seemed really impressed with Buster Keaton, calling him minimalist.
Yeah.
They loved how he could say so much, express so much without saying a word.
Keaton was a master of physical comedy, known for that stoic expression, the intricate stunts, often really dangerous. He used his body and the camera to create these amazing moments of visual humor.
Yeah, and they contrasted him with Chaplin, who they found a bit busy and full of flourish.
Interesting.
They recognized Chaplin's comedic genius, but it seemed like they preferred Keaton's more understated style, you know.
It comes down to personal taste, really. Chaplin was a master of slapstick, using exaggerated movements and expressions to create chaos and laughter. Keaton, on the other hand, was more subtle, relying on timing, precision, and a sense of deadpan absurdity. Both approaches work incredibly well in their own way.
Yeah, and they even brought up Chaplin's political views,
Yeah.
mentioning The Great Dictator and saying it could have won an Oscar.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was interesting how they brought in those wider cultural and historical contexts.
Yeah, it reminds us that performers aren't just entertainers, they're products of their time? Chaplin, especially, used his platform to talk about social and political issues, challenging authority and exposing injustice through humor.
Yeah. And then there's Jim Carrey, who's known for his over-the-top comedic style.
Right.
They described him as overwhelming,
Yeah.
but also Oscar-worthy.
Yeah, Carrie is fascinating, a performer who really pushes the boundaries of physicality and expression, not afraid to be big and loud, or to contort his body into impossible shapes to get a laugh. But even in those outrageous moments, there's this vulnerability that comes through.
Yeah, they mentioned his performance as Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon, praising his commitment to that complex and enigmatic persona.
I see what they mean.
It's like they see this connection from Keaton's stoicism to Carrey's manic energy. They understand that physicality can go beyond words and connect with an audience on a different level.
It's about finding the truth of the character, right? No matter what the style is. Whether it's Keaton's subtle glances, Chaplin's crazy pratfalls, or Carrey's rubber-faced expressions, these performers mastered the art of using their bodies to tell stories, evoke emotions, and make us laugh.
And it all goes back to those foundational principles of mime and mask work.
Right.
The precision, efficiency, and the power of nonverbal communication.
This hidden language,
Yeah.
it connects these performers, across generations and genres.
It's a powerful reminder that the body is this incredible instrument of expression.
It can say so much more than words ever could.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has.
From resolution and frame rates to the artistry of mask work and mime, and finally these iconic figures.
It's been an exploration of how the medium, the environment, and the performer's own body all work together to create what we see as an audience.
It's given me such a new appreciation for all the thought and skill that goes into those moments.
Yeah.
The ones that make us laugh, cry, and just feel it. So next time you watch a performance, I encourage you to pay attention to the little things.
Yeah.
The subtle gestures, how they use their body to fill the space. You might be surprised at what you discover.
It might even inspire you to try out some mime moves. You never know. You might have some hidden talent.
That's right.
Yeah.
But until then, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.